Skoda's idea of a performance mid-sized SUV is different to many other rival brands, and more appealing for that. The Kodiaq VRS sells for the kind of money that could alternatively buy you a faster premium badged crossover, but this 7-seat Czech contender delivers more character, more space and family flexibility, cheaper running costs, more traction, more equipment, well, more of just about everything really. None of which would matter if this wasn't really a credible piece of performance engineering. But, rather surprisingly, it actually is.
In the normal run of things, you wouldn't consider a Skoda Kodiaq, the Czech brand's mid to large 7-seat D-segment SUV, as being an ideal candidate for performance engineering. It's a family conveyance intended for suburbia rather than Silverstone. Firming it up, adding on a body kit and shoehorning a powerful engine beneath the bonnet ought to make little sense. All of which would be true if, for the car we're looking at here, the Kodiaq VRS, all Skoda had done was to replicate the usual performance formula that Volkswagen Group brands have for their fastest hatch and SUV models. A 2-litre turbo petrol engine with 4-driven wheels and around 300 PS on tap. But that's not what's served up here. Instead, there's a more sensible bi-turbo diesel with impressive torque, startling performance and a rather lovely growl. Surprising Skoda? In this case, yes. How relevant it's going to be to a Skoda buyer, even the buyer of this Kodiaq VRS, that this car holds the Nürburgring Nordschleife lap record for 7-seat SUVs, 9 minutes, 29.84 seconds if you're interested, but as we've just intimated, you probably won't be. Pointless accolades of that sort speak of Skoda's rather desperate need for this model to be taken seriously as a performance car, which you can understand to some extent. It's not only the manufacturer branding here that rather handicaps this car in the showroom, but it's also its crossover genre, the 7-seat interior, and, as if all that wasn't enough, a rather exalted price tag. So, in the unlikely event that you were even aware that this car existed, you might easily dismiss it out of hand. But you shouldn't. Not if you want family transport with 7 seats, a bit of character, sensible running costs and a searing sense of speed anyway. It's not a combination easy to find for less than £50,000 in today's market. Instead of a high-powered petrol unit that would be pointless in this kind of car, for the Kodiaq VRS, the Czech maker chose to use the most sophisticated diesel that the Volkswagen Group engineering department could offer it, a bi-turbo 245 PS unit with a hefty 500 newton meters of torque, the most that's ever featured in a production Skoda. The top speed is 139 miles an hour, but more significant is the way that this twin-turbo power plant spirits this big SUV to 62 in just 7 seconds, while making a lovely but unfortunately artificially induced growly noise when you flip the drive mode system into its sport setting. Thanks to standard adaptive damping, those settings influence ride quality as well as steering feel, throttle response and the change timings of the DSG paddle shift auto gearbox, which is necessary to harness the twin-turbo power plant's prodigious grunt. This VRS model isn't only about high performance though, it stops well, there are huge brakes, and it offers proper off-road tractional capability too, including a selectable snow mode. Now you can monitor off-road data like altitude, compass direction and wheel angle via a selectable off-road information screen in the centre stack monitor. Of potentially greater interest to most potential buyers though will be the news that this car can tow a trailer weighing up to 2.5 tonnes without breaking sweat. It's all very practical. Skoda has dressed the Kodiaq VRS carefully to match its premium performance station in life. So there are eye-catching 20-inch extreme alloy wheels, along with red VRS badging on the nose and tail, plus sleeker bumpers, big bore dual exhaust tips and gloss black finishing for the roof rails, the wing mirrors, the window frames and the front grille. None of this does anything to disguise this SUV's quite prodigious size. At around 4.7 metres in length, it's one of the biggest VW Group models to be spun off the conglomerate's MQB platform. Inside up front, you get carbon fibre trim and the obligatory sports steering wheel, which, like the gearshift Gator, features red stitching, plus aluminium pedals and sport seats upholstered in the same classy quilted micro-suede fabric that also features on the door cards. There's a standard 9.2-inch centre dash infotainment touchscreen, and Skoda includes its virtual cockpit digital instrument binnacle display, and that can be customised based on the kind of information that you want to view. Okay, let's check out the rear, and it's accessed via these wide opening doors. This second row bench features all the versatility you'd want from this kind of 7-seat SUV. So the backrest reclines for greater comfort on longer journeys, and the base slides back and forth by up to 180 millimetres. Even with it fully back, there's nothing like the legroom that you'd find in a comparably priced Skoda Superb estate, but with up to 104 millimetres of stretch-out room available, a couple of lanky occupants will still probably be more than satisfied. Many VRS buyers will want the light, airy feel that you get when this optional panoramic glass roof is specified. Now this VRS variant retains a third seating row, the kind of thing that some performance SUVs dispense with. Gaining access to the very rear of the car requires you to pull up on those latches on the second row seat shoulders, and once the seat has moved forward, there's just enough of a gap for kids or moderately athletic adults to jump into the rear. Now back here, you're quickly reminded that this is an SUV, not an MPV. Now if you're an adult, unless you have extremely accommodating middle row passengers who have slid their seats right forward, you'll find legroom pretty restricted back here. Overall though, the space back here isn't really any more restricted than it would be in any other mid-sized SUV of this kind, and uncomplaining adults joining you for short journeys will probably be quite glad of it. Out back with the powered tailgate raised, there's 270 litres of luggage room with all three rows in place. And we like the way that the tonneau cover can be neatly stored beneath the floor. And there's a button for the optional retractable tow bar that many owners will probably want. Most of the time though, of course, Kodiaq VRS owners are probably going to be using their cars with these rear seats folded into the floor. That's an action that's simple, pretty easy to complete. In which case there's 630 litres of space on offer with the middle row sensibly positioned like this. Now you can increase that figure to 765 if you push the bench right forward, or reduce it down to 560 litres if you pull it right back. Which means that you have to go round to the side of the car and pull on these straps if you want to push down the second row seat backs. With all the seats flat, a class-leadingly large 2005 litre space is revealed. So yes, this is about as practical as performance cars tend to get. This is where you might think the proposition on offer here starts to fall apart a little. After all, a £44,000 budget feels a little on the ripe side for a Skoda, even one as appealing as this. Particularly as you'll probably end up needing to spend more to get the right kind of end spec you'd ideally want. Add in niceties like a panoramic glass roof, an upgraded Canton sound system, a rear view camera and full LED headlights, and you'll be adding around £2,000 more to that figure. If you take the view that what you get as an end result is a cut-price Audi SQ7, then the spend would be justifiable. But you might understandably equally feel that what you'd actually end up with is a car that really doesn't give you very much more than you'd get from the kind of Kodiaq Sportline 2-litre TDI 190 PS DSG 4x4 model that would save you £10,000 or more. It's all, of course, a matter of personal perspective. At least there's plenty of equipment for the cash. The full body kit, DSG paddle shift auto transmission, the ultimate in cabin screen technology, including a fully digital dash, a driving mode system, all the usual camera safety features, and the kind of adaptive damping setup you usually have to pay a lot extra for with a car like this. Big bore diesel power paired to a 1.84 tonne curb weight isn't a recipe for particularly efficient running costs, but you'll do better, of course, than you would with a high output petrol engine. Skoda's official figures tell us that this car will manage an official WLTP combined cycle economy figure of 35.3 mpg and a WLTP rated CO2 reading of up to 209 grams per kilometre. Approaching these figures will require regular selection of the provided eco driving mode. Like most modern diesel units, this TDI gets a selective catalytic reduction filter to cut down on nitrous oxide, and it's been designed around the use of a urea-based solution called AdBlue. This is injected into the exhaust gas stream to help clean up emissions, and the liquid used is stored in a 12-litre tank mounted at the rear beneath the boot. This will need topping up as part of regular servicing, and you can monitor its status via dashboard display. Talking of servicing, the intervals are based around a 20,000 mile 2-year regime, and you can budget ahead for maintenance costs by taking out a fixed price prepaid servicing plan at point of purchase, and that covers the first 2 scheduled garage visits. What else? Well, insurance is rated at Group 30E. And finally, while it's certainly true that other rivals better the 3-year 60,000 mile warranty that Skoda provides, you can extend that cover to 4 or 5 years by paying extra. Not that you really need to. The brand that regularly tops independent customer satisfaction surveys. According to real people, there are few more satisfying cars to own. Skoda's VRS model line dates back to an Octavia with that badge, launched back in 2001, featuring a 1.8 litre turbo petrol engine with 180 horsepower. At the wheel of this modern interpretation of what VRS branding can mean, it's instructive to consider how things have advanced since. Now, although the Kodiaq VRS weighs 357 kilos more than the old Octavia, and it can stow far more luggage and seat 2 extra people inside, it's no more expensive to run, and it gets to 62 miles an hour a second quicker. The handling can't be quite as sweet, of course, but the way that the Czech engineers have reined in what ought to be prodigious levels of body roll from a car of this size is deeply impressive. And we actually rather like this model's engine growl party piece, even if it does have artificial origins. And in summary, well, the elephant in the room here, of course, is the £44,000 asking price, which gets you any number of premium brand mid-sized SUV alternatives, hardly any of which have 7-seat family versatility, and hardly any of which we've decided, after a week with this car, we'd rather have over a Kodiaq VRS. The formula here doesn't really add up on paper, but in the metal, we think the right kind of family buyer might rather like it.